Um, People often ask me about how I got the idea for effectuation. Usually the way people come to hear about the theory is that they have read the Academy of Management Review article. And when you read the article, it kind of gives a misleading impression that I was in a bathtub and I came up with this idea, which I wrote a paper about. In actual fact, it did not work that way. I started out my research project trying to understand what is teachable and learnable about entrepreneurship. And I was at a school where they had developed a method to study experts. They had studied experts in chess, expert scientists on how they make discoveries and so on. It's a long tradition of research in expertise. And so it struck me that maybe it would be a good idea to study expert entrepreneurs. So people who have been through the entire gamut of entrepreneurial experiences, including starting multiple ventures, maybe having failures, taken at least one company public. So the question really was, if you have been an entrepreneur for years and years and years, you've founded several companies, been through all kinds of experiences, successes and failures and so on, is there something that you have learned that I can also learn and teach? And that was the first empirical projects. I developed a 17-page problem set of typical problems that entrepreneurs face in building a company. And I had 27 expert entrepreneurs who actually went through this problem set, and they were asked to think aloud continuously as they solved the problems. I taped them, transcribed the tapes, and analyzed it. So you can imagine this process. These are extremely successful people. Many of them are billionaires. So I've asked them for 2 hours of their time. I walk into their room with my tape recorder, and no matter what I have told them, they think they're going to just tell the story. You know, they've told their story many times. And as you can see from Klaus's clips, they're very good at telling a story of how they built the ventures. I would go put the 17-page problem set in front of them, put the tape recorder, and I would say, thank you very much for your time. Please start reading. Because the method required that I don't interfere too much in the conversation. And the whole idea is to have these 27 entrepreneurs look at exactly the same problems. And they're thinking about the same parameters, and they're trying to make the same decisions. And this theory was something that I synthesized out of that data. So the theory is not something that I dreamed up. It is much more something that was induced from the data that these entrepreneurs talked about. So as I gathered the data, the first thing I started noticing, by the time I got to the third or the fourth one, I began noticing this, that they would say, I hate market research. I would not do market research. Or market research is, I know people tell me to do it, but you know, that's really the wrong way to go. Or something like that. They were explicit about that. So I started thinking about, you know, they hate market research. Seems to be a very clear result from my study. But it became interesting to ask, like, why do they hate it? What do they mean when they say they hate it? What do they mean when they say market research? And if they don't do that, what do they do in its stead? So that's where I started getting into the theory. And it turned out that they were deeply suspicious of all predictive information. And market research is just the most obvious one. And the reason it turned out later on that they had such suspicion of predictive information is because even when they did not state it explicitly, the fact is that they believed that what they did, what their stakeholders did, what you and I do, makes a difference in what happens in the world. That predictions are not very good when it comes to how human beings actually behave. So you can have predictions about how a technology may grow, but exactly which products and markets will come to be is something you don't want to trust any kind of trend report on. And that was the essence, the philosophy behind effectuation. So when I came out of that study, I did not know all that much, but I think I knew the meat of the matter, philosophically speaking, intellectually speaking, which is this notion of non-predictive strategies. At the same time, we know from human behavior that human beings like control. They like control over their lives, over their outcomes, over the future. So I started thinking about almost a philosophy, if you will, a logic of non-predictive control. Since that study, I've had a lot of help with a lot of collaborators. We have gathered other kinds of data. We have written case histories. We have actually tried to teach it in the classroom. And then all the time we learn new things about non-predictive control. In fact, a lot of the subsequent materials actually come from teaching. So when somebody will suddenly say, how will I do that? What do you mean no goals? What does that mean? So, or what does it mean to say, how do I know what I can afford to lose? You're telling me I should use affordable loss. So these questions that come in presentations, in teaching, all of those have gone back. So I go back and think about affordable loss. For example, we have written recently, a couple of colleagues and I have written a paper on affordable loss per se and looked at how affordable loss is different from, say, real options analysis, or how is it different from classical decision tree analysis, and so on. So a lot of work has come since that study and that paper in AMR, and lots of things have changed. I have also learned to convey the information a little bit differently. For example, in the original paper, I had written about strategic partnerships principle. Now I talk much more about the crazy quilt principle. It's actually very similar, but the crazy quilt captures more than just strategic partnerships. It captures relationships with a variety of stakeholders, including employees and suppliers and so on, which may or may not be captured just through the strategic partners principle. Similarly, the non-predictive control itself has become a topic of interest. And recently we published a paper in Strategic Management Journal called What to Do Next, which actually talked about taking prediction and control as orthogonal to each other, which gives you 4 quadrants of high prediction, high control, low prediction, low control, high prediction, low control, and low prediction, high control. So the 4 quadrants and all the different ways you can strategize about. So in many ways, the process of building effectuation theory has also been effectual in the sense that the initial information came from the expert entrepreneurs, and thereafter we have added different pieces of data and materials depending on the researchers and the educators who have wanted to use this material and who have wanted to build on it. And every time there is input and there are questions raised or conflicts or contradictions that we find, we go back and rethink the theory. And so I think now I've been working since 97, so it's been about 10 years worth of work. And there is a book that is coming out which talks a lot more about kind of the philosophy of non-predictive control, how it can be implemented in, in economics, in psychology, in logic, and so on. So the ideas have come much farther, and in some way they've also gone beyond the initial data. And as more data comes in and as we teach more, and I think it will keep changing. But the core, at the heart of it, is this logic of non-predictive control.